StudyJesus.com presents Bible Stories, where biblical stories of the ages come alive.
As we concluded our last Bible story, the apostles were together when someone came into the room and said, "Peace be unto you." Remember how afraid they were until the person said, "Why are you afraid? Why do you wonder who's with you? Look at my hands and look at my feet. Do you not know whose they are? Take hold of them and make sure. A spirit doesn't have flesh and bones as you see me have." And then they were very happy because their master really was with them. And Jesus said, "Have you anything to eat?" Continuing with our series on the life of Christ, we now conclude the story titled The Resurrection of Jesus.
StudyJesus.com presents Bible Stories with your host, Dr. Joe Jackson. Stories directly from God's holy word, told in easy-to-understand story form that the whole family will enjoy, and featuring the work of a talented artist illustrating each week's story. Now gather the family because it's time for this week's Bible Story.
They gave Jesus a piece of broiled fish and some honeycomb, and as he ate it, he talked with them as he had before his death. And Jesus said, "Do you not remember that when I was with you, I told you that all of this must happen? The law of Moses, the prophets, the Psalms, all of these say that the Christ must suffer as I have suffered. As my Father sent me to teach you, so I now send you to teach the world." Now, Thomas wasn't with the apostles when Jesus came. And when Thomas joined them again, they said to him, "We've seen the Lord." But Thomas didn't believe him, and he said, "I won't believe that he's living until I myself can see in his hands the print of the nails, and put my finger into those prints, and put my hand on the cut which the spear made in his side." It was a week later, and the disciples were all together planning what they should do. The doors of the room in which they were sitting were shut. Their doors were always shut in those days, because they didn't dare leave them open for fear that the rulers of the children of Israel who had stopped Jesus' work would try now to hinder them. As the disciples quietly talked, they heard the words, "Peace be with you." The door was shut, and yet Jesus stood right there among them. He went over to Thomas and said, "Now reach out your finger and touch my hands. Reach out your hand and put it into my side." Without doing either, Thomas believed and said, "My Lord and my God." And then Jesus said, "Thomas, because you've seen me, you've believed. Happy are those people who've not seen me and yet have believed." The disciples now went to Galilee for a few days as Jesus had told them. And one evening, when 7 of them were together, Peter said, "I'm going fishing." And the others said, "We'll go with you." They all went and got into a boat, but though they were out all night, they caught no fish. In the morning, Jesus came to the shore, but they didn't know who he was. He called out to them, "Children, have you caught any fish?" And they answered, "No." Again Jesus called to them, "Throw your net on the right-hand side of the boat, and you'll find some." They did this, and the net was full. John remembered another time when such a thing as this had happened, and John said to Peter, "It's the Lord." And Peter thought so too, and throwing on his coat, he jumped out of the boat and waded as fast as he could to the shore. The other disciples followed him in the boat, dragging their net full of fishes. And as soon as they had come to the land, the disciples saw a wood fire on the beach and some fish broiling on the coals and some bread nearby. And Jesus then said, "Bring the fish which you've caught." Simon Peter ran to help the others drag the net to land. It was heavy because there were 150 large fishes in it. And when the disciples landed the net, Jesus said, "Come now and eat breakfast." Jesus broke the bread and passed it to them, and then gave them some of the fish. After they'd finished eating, Jesus turned to Peter and said, "Simon, son of Jonas, do you love me more than the others do?" Peter answered, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." And Jesus then said to Peter, "Feed my lambs." A second time, Jesus asked Peter, "Simon, son of Jonas, do you love me more than the others?" And Peter gave Jesus the same answer, "Yes, Lord, you know I love you." Jesus then said to Peter, "Feed my sheep." Once more, Jesus asked Peter, "Simon, son of Jonas, do you love me?" And Peter was grieved that Jesus, his master, should ask this question for the third time. And he said to Jesus, "Lord, you know all things. You know that I love you." And once more, Jesus said to Peter, "Feed my sheep." The work of Jesus, the great shepherd, was done. The sheep now must have other leaders, and that's what Jesus wanted Peter to do for the rest of his life. Jesus talked with Peter more about Peter's work, and he told Peter that it would be hard, and that at last Peter too would suffer a cruel death. Peter looked around and, seeing John just behind him, said, "Lord, what shall this man do?" Jesus didn't tell Peter, but said, "What is that to you? You follow me." And that's what Jesus, our Master, says to us today. Jesus doesn't want us to look to see if someone else has work to do and whether that person is doing his work or not. He wants us to be sure that we ourselves are doing the work that's been given to us to do, and that we're doing our work as right as we can. Jesus was seen by his apostles again when, with about 500 other disciples, they were up on a mountain in Galilee where Jesus had called a meeting. It was at this meeting that Jesus gave the Great Commission to the disciples. He said, "Go into all the world and preach the gospel to every creature." Jesus may have given this command more than once, and it's certain that the same, in different words, had been given to Jesus' followers over and over again. But this time, Jesus said it to all his friends, and he added other words that have been precious to all the friends of Jesus ever since that time. These are the words, "He that believes and is baptized shall be saved." And then he added these marvelous words, "Lo, I am with you always, even unto the end of the world."
Precious memories Unseen angels sent from somewhere to my soul.